They found her armor torn, her blood frozen to the dirt, just another casualty in no man's land. So they wrote her off. Buried her name in the logs. But 3 nights later, she came back. Not crawling. Not begging. She walked through enemy fire, dragging their captain's helmet behind her, still warm. And when they asked what happened out there, she just smiled and said, "I learned their language." They said no man's land didn't have ghosts. Just mines, bone shards, and plasma burns frozen in the mud. But they were wrong. Something always lingered where humans were abandoned. Private Lena Voss lay half-buried beneath the corpses of her squad, her left arm twisted under a dead weight, her lungs filling with the chemical stench of burnt synth armor and alien spores. Her HUD flickered static. Blood leaked through her collar, warm at first, now a cold smear across her neck. She didn't scream. The screams had stopped hours ago. What was left were the echoes, metal grinding against metal, the wet sound of blades pulling free, and the monstrous hum of the score chanting over the bodies. That sound never left your head. Not even when you shut off your comms. Her squad leader had tried to carry her. Had lifted her with one good arm before this coarse spear took him through the back. His last words: "Run! They won't take us both." And they hadn't. This corps captain hadn't killed her. He had stood over her broken body, his 7-foot bulk dripping with the blood of the others, his segmented armor flexing with every breath. He spoke in fractured Terran. "You are not worth the feed. Crawl. Tell your kind. This place is ours." Then he kicked her in the ribs and walked away, dragging the last surviving commando by one leg. Voss had felt something in her chest give. She didn't know if it was bone or pride. It didn't matter. She had survived. And now that was their mistake. She bit down on the coagulant tab in her vest, the copper taste flooding her mouth as nanites sealed the worst of her wounds. She waited, body still beneath the corpses, while night settled and the score patrols moved off. Then she rose. One arm hanging limp, body trembling from blood loss, she crawled to the shattered ridge overlooking the forward trench. Her sidearm had one charge left. Her blade was broken. But she had something this corps didn't. She had rage. She didn't press the distress beacon. She didn't call for evac. She didn't scream into the void for command to come save her. They had left her. The squad's last radio chatter still burned in her mind. Commander Maddox's voice. "We can't risk more boots in the kill zone. Voss is presumed Kia. Repeat, Kia. Pull out." She had been declared dead before her pulse stopped. She smiled. Let them believe it. Let them think they'd lost another medic. Let them carry on with the war. She would write her own ending. Voss spent the night crawling between wreckage piles, dragging a half-melted scout drone behind her like a sled. She used it to scavenge parts, metal splinters, broken lenses, a shorted thermal coil. She constructed her first trap with trembling fingers, pressure plate, reverse energy discharge, rearming tripwire. Primitive. Brutal. It worked. The first score to step on it lost both legs and most of his ribcage. His screams echoed for hours. The patrol found his corpse arranged in a seated position, a Terran dog tag placed in his palm. One of hers. They didn't understand the message. Not yet. She did it again the next night. Then again. Each kill took longer. Cost more strength. But she was learning. Their movement patterns. Their hunting chance. Their reliance on scent and ambient psionics. She adapted. The pain faded into discipline. The hunger became calculation. The fear burned down into something clean, focus. By day 3, the corps captain returned. His voice was different now, louder, faster. Not arrogant. Commanding. He was afraid. She watched from the ridge, body pressed to the wet earth, as he ordered the remaining patrols to double back. As he tore down the crude memorial she'd built from twisted armor and blood-slit claws. As he screamed, "Find the Defiler! Find her! Defiler!" She laughed, the sound dry and cracked. So they had given her a name. It was better than a tombstone. She made her move that night. The captain hunted alone, believing she would strike his soldiers again. She followed him for hours. Waited until he stopped at the cratered ridge to rest. He removed his helmet. She saw his face, part chitin, part flesh. A scar ran across his eye, proof of dozens of battles. A war leader, feared by even his own. And yet, he looked over his shoulder. Often. Nervously. He was waiting for her. He didn't know she was already there. The fight was fast, brutal, and silent. He heard her a second too late, the whisper of metal dragging across broken stone. He turned. She drove the sharpened shard of Terran plating through the soft part under his jaw, pushing until it punched through the top of his skull. His limbs spasmed, and then he collapsed, twitching. She didn't say anything. Not until she peeled the helmet from his head. Then, holding it in both hands, blood dripping down her arms, she looked toward the trench line miles away, toward her people who had left her. And she said, "I'm coming home." Then she began to walk. One step. Another. The helmet dragging behind her through the dirt like an anchor made of vengeance. Behind her, the score dead stared into the dark, their captain's mouth still open in shock. And somewhere, far across the battlefield, Commander Maddox stared at a grainy drone feed and whispered, "Holy hell!" The ghost they'd buried in no man's land was walking again. And she wasn't alone. The mud never dried on Ekros 7. Lena Voss awoke with it in her mouth, packed behind her teeth like soil over a coffin. Her fingers twitched first. Then the pain returned, sharp, real, dragging her back into her body like a scream rising from deep water. She'd spent hours lying beside this corps captain's corpse, waiting for the tremors in her legs to stop and the dizziness to pass. The helmet lay beside her, heavy, humming faintly with psionic residue. It wasn't just a trophy. It was humming like it was alive. She had no food, no backup, no functioning comms. Just the helmet, a broken knife, and the memory of a voice saying, "Presumed Kia." She tied the helmet to her hip with a torn sling and moved. At first, it was crawling. Every foot of ground she gained came at the price of searing muscle and red vision. The helmet dragged through the sludge behind her like a reminder, like an iron dog she refused to leave behind. The score were out there, hunting, furious. She could feel it. Their patrols now moved erratically, chaotically, no longer the disciplined cadence of psionic song but something wild. Unsettled. They'd felt his death. He'd been more than a captain. He was a node in their network. She'd severed it. By the second night she found her first corpse, a Terran scout impaled on a heat lance, half sunken into the mire. His utility pack was intact. Inside she found water, a half-used charge cell, and a cracked stealth shroud. "Thanks, brother," she muttered, drinking without hesitation. "You won't be the last, I.O." She slept beside him that night, body curled in the cold. She dreamed of voices arguing in static. When she woke, she was no longer just moving. She was planning. She activated the cracked shroud and tested its flicker range. It gave her 30 seconds of near invisibility before frying out. Not enough for escape, but enough for infiltration. She watched the score hunt from the ridge. Their formation was different. Sloppy. One screamed in frustration, stabbing a claw into the earth. Another tore a piece of its own armor off and hurled it into the trees. They were grieving. But it wasn't grief the way humans knew it. This was madness. Disorientation. She whispered to herself. He was their mind. Without him, their meat with knives. She moved again, finding a ledge overlooking a broken dropship hull. Inside were the remains of a Terran comms specialist, still clutching a shattered relay. The unit was slag, but the storage core inside was intact. She jammed it into her forearm port. Data flashed. Recent topographic scans. Coordinates. Local patrol rotations. A ghost of a command line from Commander Maddox. Survivors presumed Kia. No recovery operation scheduled. Maintain defense perimeter. Her jaw tightened. No recovery. Right. Then I'll come to you. But first, she had to speak to the score. Not with words. With violence. That night, she waited by a psionic totem. The Corps used them to reinforce battlefield cohesion. With their captain dead, this one pulsed erratically, as if unsure of what frequency to emit. She coated the base in petroleum jelly from a downed medkit, lined the cracks with fuel rods, and jammed the core of the scout drone into the middle. When 3's Corps warriors arrived, chanting out of sync, she activated the drone's distress ping. The totem ignited in a burst of fire and sound. 2's Corps were thrown off their feet. The 3rd screamed, clawing at its head, the psionic feedback short-circuiting its own mind. She dropped from the trees like vengeance, and drove her broken blade into the last one's throat. She didn't stop there. She dragged their bodies into a triangle, placed the captain's helmet in the center, and set fire to the bodies using their own plasma grenades. 3 pillars of smoke rose into the sky by dawn. She wanted the others to see it. To feel it. She wasn't running. She wasn't hiding. She was declaring war. By day 5, she was a rumor. Terran's sensors picked up strange EM spikes in no man's land, short-range psionic surges, flashes of fire, corpses in unnatural arrangements. Recon drones spotted sigils, made of score claws tied together in Terran Morse. Commander Maddox watched the feeds in silence, eyes narrowed. "Who's doing this? Insurgent activity?" one officer asked. Another leaned closer. "Sir, we got a trace on the helmet. The one from this Corps High Commander. It's moving." Maddox leaned in. "Show me." The map pulsed. A slow, steady crawl across the terrain, moving from deep in Corps territory toward Terran lines. It was the kind of movement you didn't expect from anything living. Except it wasn't just the helmet. There was a figure behind it. Alone. He stared, mouth dry. Son of a bitch. She was alive. Not just alive, winning. Back in the dirt, Voss crouched over her 7th kill. This one had tried to pray before dying. It had spoken to her in psionic bleeds, images of home, of the hive, of memory. She torn its skull open and whispered, "We don't kneel to monsters." The helmet hummed louder now. It was adapting to her. Accepting her. Sometimes it pulsed when she slept, emitting faint trails of blue light. Once she heard a whisper. It said, "You should have died." She whispered back, "Yeah, well, so should he." She was close to the Terran line now. Closer than she'd been in days. She passed another patrol site, 3's Corps torn apart by their own, their heads bashed in. Panic, paranoia, disorder. She hadn't needed to kill them. Her legend was doing it for her. She reached the edge of the ridge by nightfall. Beyond it, the ruins of the forward comms station. And there, flickering in the dark, a drone hovering low. She stepped into its light. Bloodied. Gaunt. Helmet at her side. The drone scanned her. Confirmed Voss Lena, presumed Kia. She looked up at it and said, "Tell Maddox to set a seat. I'm not done yet." Then she began walking again, dragging the helmet with her, toward the glow of human trenches. Behind her, the jungle went still. Ahead, the war was waiting. Commander Maddox didn't say a word when she stepped out of the fog. The blood-soaked figure limping through the ravine, dragging the captain's helmet behind her, wasn't the same Private Lena Voss they'd abandoned in no man's land. That woman had died in silence. The one that walked into camp wore death like a second skin. "Jesus Christ!" someone whispered near the barricades. She dropped the helmet at Maddox's feet. It clanged once, rolled, and stopped at his boot. No salute. No request for debrief. Just a stare. Maddox swallowed hard. "You're supposed to be dead." "I was," she said. Then she passed out. They ran her through triage. 23 injuries, for near fatal. She spent 9 hours under dermal foam, spinal recalibration, and synaptic flushes. They tried sedating her. The AI reported 2 attempts. She broke both injections. The med team stopped trying. By the next day, she was sitting upright in the command tent, cleaned up but unchanged. Her eyes never blinked when she spoke. Her voice was flat. They think in pulses. Tones. Every squad is harmonized to a command psionic. He's like their radio tower. You kill the node, the signal dies. That captain I killed, he was one of their command hubs. Maddox leaned in. You're telling me their leadership network is psychic? Yes. And the helmet? She nodded toward it. Still broadcasting. Muted but active. We thought it was ceremonial. She looked him dead in the eyes. It's not. It's their war map, their orders, their doctrine. And I've been listening. Maddox tapped the table. You brought us a weapon. I brought them a message. What kind of message? That I'm not the one who's supposed to be afraid. They ran diagnostics. The helmet pulsed with low-frequency psionic data, encrypted, alive, and unstable. Terran analysts tried syncing. The first one vomited blood 30 seconds in. The second blacked out. The third went catatonic. Voss watched from behind the glass. They're doing it wrong. You speak alien now? Maddox asked. No. But I understand pain. That's what their signal's built from. Neural trauma, instinctual fear, emotional feedback. You're saying it reads memories? Not just reads. Feeds. That's how their command structure stays unified. Every unit relives what the commander sees. When I killed their captain, they all felt it. Maddox stared at the helmet. Then we give them something else to feel. What? Your pain. She didn't hesitate. Hook me in. The technicians screamed protest. Maddox overruled them. If she says she can do it, we trust her. Sir, that's not protocol. Protocol's been getting us buried in trenches for 6 months. They wired her in. The link was like drowning in static. Images bled into her brain. Score memories, mass births, combat rituals, feasting on enemy tissue, psionic chants and ultraviolet color patterns. Their captain's last moments. Her blade in his throat. The sound of his scream. She didn't recoil. She pushed deeper. She layered her memories on top. Her abandonment, the taste of blood, the burn of betrayal, the numbness of crawling alone. And then, with a breath like ice cracking, she broadcasted. The scream went out through the helmet. Psionic pulses rode the memory like a carrier wave. Across the valley, score warriors froze mid-step. Some dropped their weapons. Some staggered and shrieked. One detonated his own psionic node by accident, taking half his squad with him. Reports flooded in. Score patrols retreating. Hive bond signals collapsing. Command cohesion shattering. Maddox stared at the screen. What the hell did you just do? I made them feel what I felt. You think they'll run? No. They'll come for me. And you want that? They think I'm a virus. Let them try to cut me out. By the next morning, every score channel within 100 miles repeated the same signal. A distorted image of a human face. Her face. Overlaid with the symbol of the helmet. They called her the Defiler. Maddox called it leverage. He had the helmet mounted on a psi-stabilized relay tower and used it to pulse commands, false coordinates, misaligned orders, tricking core units into ambushing each other, retreating from supply depots, abandoning strategic zones. It worked. For 3 days, the enemy collapsed. But the score adapted. New commanders emerged. Stronger psionic links. Reinforced neural insulation. And worst, new tactics. They're moving toward our lines, a lieutenant warned. Unified. Fast. Maddox looked at Voss. Thought you broke them. I did. Now they're evolving. War breeds monsters. And what do you call yourself? She looked at him and smiled for the first time. The first monster they didn't build. The next wave hit the trenches harder than any before. Score war priests chanted in frequencies that cracked human visors. Plasma spears fell like rain. But the helmet kept pulsing, and with each pulse, Voss's memories infected the new commanders, slowing their formations, turning their instincts against them. Maddox saw it firsthand. One commander collapsed mid-ritual, clawing at his own skull, screaming in a voice that wasn't his. "Why did you leave me? Why did you leave me? Why did you?" Then silence. It wasn't enough. This course sent a final message. A direct signal to the helmet. Translated barely. A challenge. "Come! End this." Voss heard it. Understood it. She strapped the helmet to her back. Maddox didn't try to stop her. "You're going into the Hive Cathedral alone?" "No. I'm taking everything I've become." He nodded. "You coming back?" "If I do, we win. And if you don't?" She looked toward the distant storm clouds gathering over the battlefield. "Then bury me deep. Because shallow graves don't hold what I've become." Then she walked out, the ground humming beneath her, the helmet glowing brighter with every step. The Defiler was going to finish the war. Or make sure no one ever forgot what happened when humanity got left behind. The Hive Cathedral wasn't a building. It was a living wound in the ground, pulsing with black light and psionic resonance so dense it made the skin crawl. Lena Voss stood at the edge, helmet slung over her shoulder, eyes dry from a silence that had gone on too long. This was where the war ended. One way or another. Maddox's final transmission still echoed in her ear. "Your call, Voss. You break the signal tower, we'll strike. If you don't, we'll assume you died fighting." She never responded. There was nothing left to say. The entrance swallowed her whole. Vines that whispered. Bones that sang. She walked through the corridor of the dead with the poise of a soldier, and the certainty of a weapon that had chosen its own target. Her boots struck blood-polished stone, and she felt them stir, the guardians, the priests, the psion-clad elite who had once danced in the void of her pain. They remembered her scream. They remembered the captain's death echoing through the hive mind. But what terrified them most was that she had survived it. And now she was back. A figure stepped forward. Clad in living armor, its face hidden behind a mask carved from vertebrae. "You should not have come," it said in broken Terran. Voss dropped the helmet between them. "That's what he said. Before I killed him. You desecrate our sacred net. You poison our song." "No. I just made you listen to ours." The figure raised its spear, but she didn't flinch. "You think you can end the war by killing me?" it hissed. "No," she said. "I already ended it. You're just the echo." Then she moved. The fight wasn't graceful. It wasn't glorious. It was pure violence, tactical and brutal. Her left arm shattered under a psionic blast, but she drove her knee into the priest's jaw, snapping its mask in half. It screamed. She jammed the helmet into its chest and activated the memory feed. It spasmed. It began to feel. Her pain, her isolation, her rage. Her betrayal. It dropped its weapon, clutching its skull as her trauma detonated in its mind like 1,000 knives. She picked up the spear and drove it through the thing's gut. "Congratulations," she whispered. "You're human now." The cathedral responded. Lights pulsed. Doors opened. They weren't trying to trap her. They were trying to stop the spread. She moved deeper. Behind her, the corpse continued to twitch, repeating her screams in its own tongue. Not words. Emotions. Memories. Voss passed the inner sanctum and found the true seat of power, a throne of bone and crystal, occupied by a creature larger than any she'd seen. Its body was fused with conduits, its limbs held in place by psionic chains. The High Conductor. The final node. The one who held the war together. "You are the infection," it said without turning. "You have corrupted the stream." She stared. "I am the stream now. You think pain is strength. No. I think it's memory. And yours are about to change." She stepped forward. The helmet pulsed. The High Conductor writhed, cables twitching, sparks flying. It tried to resist, but she didn't need consent. She slammed the helmet into the central neural lattice and triggered the full broadcast. Every second she'd survived in no man's land. Every death she'd witnessed. Every scream she hadn't been able to stop. Every moment they'd left her. It all poured out in a flood. The chamber exploded in light. Not fire. Not flame. Memory. And this core felt it all. From the priests above to the soldiers in the trenches, they screamed as her life merged with their hive mind. They saw the Terran soldier crawling through filth. They heard the heartbeats slow to a crawl as she lay bleeding in silence. They felt the betrayal of abandonment. The vengeance born in darkness. The raw, unfiltered terror of becoming something new just to survive. Outside, Maddox saw the Hive Cathedral light up like a flare. He turned to his strike officers. That's the signal. What if she's still inside? She knew what she was doing. He ordered the assault. Dropships screamed overhead. Artillery pounded the outer shell of the hive. Its core defenses crumbled not from fire, but from within. Whole squads turned on each other, unable to separate their own minds from the infection. Some dropped their weapons. Others wailed in forgotten languages. A few curled up and whispered her name like a curse. Defiler. Virus. Vas. Inside, the high conductor lay twitching. Its mouth open, emitting nothing but static. Vas crouched beside it. You feel that? That's fear. Real fear. We humans don't inherit our kills. We remember them. The helmet sparked violently. She looked down. This thing's going to overload. The conductor's last words were a hiss. You'll die with us. She nodded. Probably. Then she smiled. The helmet detonated. A wave of psionic shock burst from the core, tearing through the Hive Cathedral, obliterating the throne, the conduits, the memories. Outside, the core fell silent. Not dead. Just empty. The hive mind was gone. Back at base, Maddox waited for the dust to settle. Sensors went quiet. No psionic signatures. No screams. Just silence. Then a blip. One life form. Walking. Toward them. He stepped outside, rifle in hand, just in case. A figure limped over the ridge. Smoke clung to her armor, half of which was burned through. Her hair was scorched. Her skin blistered. But her eyes were clear. Lena Voss didn't collapse. She walked until she stood face to face with him. Commander. He opened his mouth, then closed it. She held something out. It wasn't the helmet. It was a single shard of alien crystal, humming softly. He took it. What is it? The last memory they'll ever have. He looked around at the soldiers watching, stunned. You just killed a god. No, she said. I reminded one that we exist. He exhaled. You're going to be a legend, Voss. She turned away. I'm already a ghost. And behind her, the war was over. Not because humanity fought harder, but because one woman made the enemy feel human. The silence after the war was the loudest thing Lena Voss had ever heard. No gunfire. No chants. No hive thrum echoing in the back of her skull. Just the distant wind across a battlefield that no longer had sides. This core hive mind had collapsed into itself like a dying star. Command structures evaporated. Drone units wandered the jungle with no orders, no voice to follow. Some dropped their weapons and sat in the dirt, unblinking. Others clawed at their own heads until they stopped moving altogether. Whatever humanity had done through her, whatever she'd become, it had worked. But victory didn't feel like a medal. It felt like something sharp stuck in her ribs that wouldn't come out. She stood in front of the high command table while Maddox, flanked by generals and data analysts, scrolled through casualty reports and AI projections. Everyone was talking about peace. Peace treaties. Border resolutions. Memorial construction. No one looked at her directly. So this is it, Maddox said finally. War's over. She nodded. Then why does it still feel like we lost? You didn't lose. You won. You walked into their holiest place and shattered their god. You did more damage than a battalion with orbital support. Yeah, she said. But I left something behind. You brought back a crystal. Command's already running it through psychological simulations. We think it's inert. It's not. It remembers. Maddox narrowed his eyes. You saying it's alive? I'm saying it's not done. He studied her. You think they'll come back? No. I think they'll become something worse. The table went quiet. Then someone from the far end, a science officer with two clean hands, asked, Are you requesting to lead a defense initiative? She shook her head. No. I'm requesting transfer. To where? Nowhere, she said. Someplace quiet. Cold. Far from anyone who thinks what I did was glorious. You ended a war. No, she replied. I became the reason it ended. Maddox didn't argue. He just looked at her like someone who had finally read the last page of a story that never had a happy ending. She turned to leave. Wait, he called out. One thing. They're calling it the VAS protocol now. The idea of using trauma imprints in psionic warfare. Your memories as weapons. It's going into doctrine. She didn't stop walking. Burn it. What? Everything about it. Burn it. Don't make another one of me. But what if? She turned on him, eyes hollow and voice like glass breaking. If the price of peace is another me, then it's not peace. It's just silence with better PR. He didn't try again. They gave her a shuttle. No honors. No medals. Just a destination with no name and coordinates she didn't check. She sat in the seat and watched the stars blur. Midway through the flight, she activated the crystal. Just a pulse. Just enough to feel the echo. It whispered. Not in words. In moments. It showed her a memory that wasn't hers, a score hatchling gripping a staff, looking up at a war priest with reverence. The feeling of unity. Purpose. Belonging. Then the images shifted, her face, screaming, crawling, bleeding. The memory had infected the memory. Even in peace, her war remained. She turned the crystal off. When the shuttle landed, it was night. Ice winds blew across the surface. There were no people. Just a listening post, automated, quiet, empty. She unpacked. She stored the helmet shard in a cryolocker. She wrote her first and only message to Maddox. Subject, you'll feel it soon. Body, they're dreaming different dreams now. Yours. Mine. There's no putting that back in the cage. She closed the console. She slept for the first time in weeks. Dreamless. Until she wasn't. The next day, a beacon lit up in the station. A weak signal. Not Score. Not Terran. Something new. The waveform carried no threat. Just resonance. Like someone knocking on a door without knowing why. She stared at it. Then she opened the channel. A voice filtered through, garbled, stuttering, alien yet familiar. We are sorry. She didn't respond. We remember pain. She said nothing. You changed what we are. She placed her hand on the crystal. The voice wavered. Do you forgive? She closed the channel. Outside, snow began to fall. Peace wasn't something you signed. It was something you survived. The beacon didn't stop. For 3 days the signal pulsed through the station's walls, soft, insistent, like a memory refusing to fade. Lena Voss stared at the console, the words unchanged. We remember pain. We are sorry. Do you forgive? She didn't answer. Instead, she studied the snow outside. It fell endlessly, coating the outpost in a thick, muffling layer. The kind of silence that crept into your bones. She thought she'd crave this, distance, isolation, peace, but the quiet had weight. It pressed down harder than the battlefield ever had. You could hear things in it. Things you'd buried. They'd given her this place to heal. But healing required something she no longer had. The crystal sat on the desk beside her. The last piece of this core warmind, now inert but still warm to the touch. It had pulsed once when she dreamed, twitched as if responding. That was enough to make her stop sleeping. The broadcast wasn't military. Not tactical. Not a threat. It was a message of remorse, alien guilt clumsily shaped into human language. She could feel the confusion in it, like a child mimicking sounds it didn't understand. But it was trying. It remembered her, and it was trying. She hated that it mattered. She recorded a message. Didn't send it. Deleted it. Then recorded it again. You keep asking if I forgive you. But you're asking the wrong person. You didn't kill me. You didn't leave me in the dirt. That was us. My own command. My own species. She stopped. Started again. You think pain is the price of understanding. But pain doesn't teach. It scars. It hides things. If you remember only pain, you'll become what we were at our worst. She leaned back in her chair, running her hands through her short, uneven hair. You want forgiveness? Forget me. The beacon blinked. She reached for the console. Hesitated. Then typed, no. The transmission stopped. She expected silence. Instead, the beacon returned a different signal. We are not the only ones. Her chest tightened. She scanned the frequency, triangulating its echo. The transmission was bouncing between multiple relays, some Terran, some Skor, others unknown. The war had ended, but the network hadn't died with it. Fragments had survived. Worse, hybrids were emerging. Her screen flickered. An unauthorized file auto-downloaded. She opened it. Footage. Skor drones working beside Terran engineers. Not in captivity. In sync. They were building something, a relay station on neutral ground. Shared tools. Shared data. Human laughter. Insect gestures approximating it. She watched a Skor place a hand, clawed, massive, on a Terran soldier's shoulder. The human didn't flinch. Under the footage, Initiative 9 Protocol, Joint Memory Exchange Development. She slammed the console shut. Her chest burned with something she couldn't name. It wasn't anger. It was displacement. The war had moved on without her. And now the thing she'd used to break the enemy was being used to bind them. She wanted to scream. Instead, she walked outside. Snow crunched under her boots. She walked until the outpost was behind her, until the cold bit through her jacket and her skin went numb. She dropped to her knees and buried the crystal in the snow. Stay there, she said. Stay dead. The wind answered. She returned to the station. By evening, the beacon pulsed again. The message was shorter this time. She is not forgotten. She didn't know who it meant. Her? Or the one she used to be? Maddox's name popped up on her comms 3 hours later. Figured you'd seen the file, he said. Everyone has. What are you doing? Trying to keep the next war from starting before the ink dries. You're building networks with the species we just erased from the inside. We didn't erase them. We changed them. You changed them. I didn't give you permission to use me. You weren't supposed to be an idea. You were just supposed to survive. She said nothing. He sighed. Voss, they revere you. They don't understand vengeance, but they remember you. What you did. What you felt. It's a religion now. She closed her eyes. Don't worship me. We're not. But they are. And they're not alone. He paused. There are new species showing up. Contact. Diplomacy. The Skor aren't fighting them. They're trying to teach them. About us. About what happens when you forget empathy. And that makes it okay? No. It makes it necessary. I didn't want to change them. I wanted them to stop killing. You did both. Another pause. I'm offering you a post. On the council. The joint initiative. Full authority. Help shape what comes next. I already shaped it, she said. With a blade. Then pick up a pen. She stared at the console long after the transmission ended. The wind howled. She stood. Went back outside. Dug through the snow with numb fingers until she found the crystal again. It was still warm. Still alive. She held it in her palm. Fine, she said. One message. She returned inside. Typed slowly. This is Lena Voss. I am not your God. I am not your memory. I am not your symbol. If you want peace, stop remembering me and start remembering yourselves. But if you need something more, if you need to know what it costs to change, then remember it all. The blood. The betrayal. The crawl. The scream. Not because it made me strong, but because it made me human. She hit send. The beacon stopped. Not silent. Just still. She looked out the window, watched the snow fall. Somewhere, something had changed. Not in the war. In what came after. And maybe, just maybe, that was enough.